Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming back to enjoy the next session. So I'd like to introduce Saralyn Thomas, who's the Vice Chair and International Liaison for the Nuclear Institute Young Generation Network. As in my new role as the President-elect of the Nuclear Institute, we've had some good dealings, and part of that is to understand what are the challenges as far as COP26 is concerned and getting nuclear on the agenda. And then also there's the whole piece around education and training. So further to say, I shall pass you over to Sarah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jazz. I'm really happy to be here today, and I am here today to tell you a little bit more about those challenges of getting nuclear at the table as part of the activities that the YGN have been running this year, as well as share some information about my own day job and how my role in safety and working for my organisation is working to combat climate change. So, before we really get into it, I just want to give a little bit of information about the Nuclear Institute and the YGN itself. So the Nuclear Institute is the professional body and learned society for the UK nuclear sector. We are a charity, that's a very important point, with around 3,000 members across the industry, working in different areas such as new build, power generation, decommissioning, and much more. Then the YGN, the Young Generation Network, is the young members branch of the Nuclear Institute. And our mission as the YGN is to encourage and develop those in the early stages of their nuclear careers and ensure that their voice is heard in shaping the future of our sector. And part of that is encouraging more young people into the industry in the first place. So, COP26 will be hosted, very, very scary thinking about this, but it's just a few weeks away in Glasgow at the start of November. The climate talks will be the biggest international summit the UK has ever hosted, bringing together heads of state, climate experts, and campaigners to agree coordinated action to tackle climate change. Now, the Nuclear Institute is a member society of the European Nuclear Society. And the ENS is also a UNFCCC accredited NGO at the conference and a founding member of Nuclear for Climate, which is a grassroots initiative gathering over 150 associations. For each COP, Nuclear for Climate partners with the Young Generation Association from the hosting country to coordinate presence in the UN zone and run a campaign of pre-COP events. So that's just a little bit of background into the YGN's really unique opportunity this year in and how we are getting involved at COP26. So, in order to achieve all these activities and represent nuclear at the conference, we launched the International Net Zero Needs Nuclear campaign back in February 2021. Now, I'm hoping that a couple of people on here have already heard of this and we're doing a good job at promoting it. The campaign aims to promote and raise awareness of nuclear as a low carbon energy source, as well as a key part of our path to net zero. Really importantly, we're looking to influence decision making in advance of the conference to make sure that nuclear is at the table alongside renewables. So we're looking for policymakers to take a scientific and technology neutral approach at the conference. And we're also envisioning sustainable collaboration between nuclear and renewables. So the heart of the campaign really lies in a position paper that the YGN wrote on behalf of Nuclear for Climate earlier this year. And this position paper has been written for policymakers, and it gives the scientific justification on why net zero needs nuclear. That position paper then is focused on the ask that all negotiators and policymakers involved at COP take a scientific and technology neutral approach to energy policy and financing, so that we can promote sustainable collaboration between nuclear and renewables. So we have approached various policymakers around the world now with this position paper, and amazingly, it's been translated into around 17 languages, was the last I heard, and it is now supported by over 100 nuclear associations across the globe, and that's including Women in Nuclear Global and its 53 chapters. So the position paper itself, it gives that scientific justification, and it is based on the following points. So nuclear is a proven low carbon source of energy. Nuclear is available, scalable, and deployable. It is flexible, and it is an affordable source of clean energy, integrating with an increasing supply of variable renewables. Nuclear can deliver more than just low carbon electricity. It's also capable of supporting the decarbonisation of other sectors. And lastly, nuclear supports inclusive and sustainable global development, and it is strongly aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So this position paper was our key to engagement with policymakers. And we've done a lot of work in the last year, and I just want to go through some of the highlights of this engagement with policymakers. I know that I am learning more and more about nuclear in a political world as part of this, and it's been a really big learning experience. But we started out by writing letters to key policymakers at COP, such as the COP26 President Alok Sharma, the Secretary of State for BEIS, Kwasi Kwarteng, UNFCCC Exec Secretary Patricia Espinosa, and many more, imploring them to ensure that nuclear was represented at COP26. And we've actually received a really encouraging letter from Alok Sharma, stressing that nuclear is a key part of our energy mix, as indicated in the government's 10-point plan. Well, we also had a really similar letter from Dr. Fatih Birol, the General Director of the International Energy Agency, stating that nuclear energy is an important part of our global energy mix. Then we've had some really encouraging meetings with Trudy Harrison and Virginia Crosby, MPs for Copeland and Anismone, about how the YGN can work together to raise awareness of nuclear at the conference. And then just a few weeks ago, we were really happy to attend Nuclear Week in Parliament, organised by the NIA, where we had the opportunity to speak to several MPs about nuclear energy and our plans at COP26, as well as attend a meeting with the then Energy Minister, Anne-Marie Trevelyan. Now, there's been a common theme to many of these meetings, and it's really encouraging that we have been applauded by everyone for what the YGN is attempting to do at COP. My personal highlight was one part of the letter that we received from Alok Sharma, in which he called our work a clear example of leadership in climate action. However, the exchanges that we have had have been fairly non-committal. The remainder of the letter from Mr. Sharma, which we received in May, reiterated the government's sort of standard line on nuclear energy and its inclusion in the 10-point plan, but no reference to how nuclear would actually be represented at COP, and no commitment to it being represented, which is what we were trying to get out of our letters. Meanwhile, our discussion with Minister Trevelyan was very encouraging about nuclear's role at COP, and she loved hearing everything that we had planned and is extremely pro-nuclear. However, she has since moved on to the Trade Department. With the cabinet being constantly reshuffled, that was a challenge that we hadn't really thought of much at the start of our campaign when identifying our stakeholders. So speaking of challenges, I now want to get to the crux of the presentation to discuss some of the perceived risk of nuclear to policymakers. And the main one that it seems to come down to a lot in nuclear energy policy is the financing aspect. Something that, again, I am learning a lot about from this campaign, as it's not my original background. A big win for the industry right now would be for the go-ahead on a financing solution for nuclear, including the introduction of legislation on the RAB model, the classification of nuclear as green in the UK taxonomy, and nuclear's consequent inclusion in the green financing framework. So with the majority of the nuclear fleet due to retire in less than 3 years, the Nuclear All-Party Parliamentary Group Net Zero Needs Nuclear 2024 roadmap sets out a financing solution as a key priority, which we really need an urgent decision on by the end of this year, I believe. This was indeed a major part of the aims behind Nuclear Week in Parliament just a couple of weeks ago. And contrary to opinion, I don't think things are too bleak on this front, potentially. There was a blow back in July with the UK government green financing framework excluding nuclear. But I believe that things are starting to look a little bit more encouraging on the financing model front. And we've had other wins like the inclusion of nuclear in the Green Jobs Task Force. So that's a really high profile and important reference to nuclear being green. So hopefully that starts a precedent, and we'll see something by the end of the year on that. Then another interesting point is that there is always a risk when undertaking a large infrastructure project. The average cost overrun and delays from large projects such as HS2 are pretty much the same as cost overruns and delays in building a nuclear power station, I believe. So hopefully SMRs can eliminate that risk in the future and provide a much more certain timescale and budget, giving more confidence to policymakers about the delivery of nuclear power generation. In turn, more confidence, more certainty, and more commitment from government can help the industry itself accelerate. Government commitment to a new fleet of reactors would strengthen the confidence in the sector and mean that suppliers and people can really commit to nuclear instead of looking at other industries which may have a better short-term return, especially when you're talking about SMEs in the industry. As most of us are probably aware, the nuclear sector deal already has cost reduction as one of its focuses, with the aim of reducing the cost of nuclear energy by 30% when compared to Hinkley Point C. And continuous investment in nuclear will drive down these costs, modularisation will drive down these costs, and a financing solution will also reduce costs for the biggest single expense of new construction. And in order to achieve this, we need to reduce those risks and look for opportunities at the design stage to do that. And we can only really do that by working together as an industry, working with government, and also learning from other sectors. So we recently had a very interesting conversation in an industry roundtable on nuclear messaging. And the aim of the meeting was to work with BEIS to better understand what messaging works best with MPs. However, one of the things that was discussed and contested a fair bit was whether MPs were actually the key audience for us to target. And this might be fairly cynical, but at the end of the day, MPs care about what their constituents care about. They want their votes. For instance, if an MP who in the past has been very anti-nuclear, but has since changed their mind, and it does happen, they may not be as open about this as the industry would like them to be, in the fear that they might lose some of their votes. Generally, over this campaign, I get the impression that most MPs are either fairly pro-nuclear or they're neutral, they're willing to have conversations about it, but many of them probably don't shout out about it as much as we would really like, and maybe that's because they're scared. So for me, managing the perceived risks of nuclear from a political point also really comes down to nuclear education to the general public. And as part of our Net Zero Needs Nuclear activities, we have been running a series of paid promotion social media posts on Twitter in order to inform people of the benefits of nuclear. So you can see an example on the screen where Sophie's done a little video, one of our volunteers, about the benefits of nuclear. And of course, we got a lot of anti-nuclear comments. As a nuclear safety consultant, I naturally expected that nuclear safety would probably feature very prominently, with the usual references to Chernobyl. But actually, we found that radioactive waste and its impact on future generations was probably raised more. So these anti-nuclear comments, they were expected, and to manage the risk of those comments, we were ready with counter arguments for these expected issues. So I could go through all the counter arguments for different issues that we considered for ages, but there's far too many of them. So I will just concentrate on the two big ones that kept coming up, which were safety and waste. So in terms of safety, we'd get the usual questions. What about all the deaths from accidents? What about Chernobyl? What about Fukushima? And I think it was really important to address that, yes, deaths have happened and deaths are tragic. However, when compared to all energy sources, nuclear actually comes out as having one of the lowest death rates. There's a term that's also often used called the energy death print, and that is comparable with wind and solar. Chernobyl was a terrible accident, but it's 31 people that died as a direct result of the accident. 2 died from a blast effect, and a further 29 firemen died in the days following the accident. And the long-term deaths from radiation exposure are highly contested. Even when you're including all of those deaths, nuclear still comes out as one of the lowest death rates for an energy source. And then really interestingly for Fukushima, 1 person died from radiation at Fukushima. However, more than nearly 600 people died from the rushed evacuations and the fear of radiation. So that's a prime example that sometimes the fear of radiation can be more damaging than the radiation itself. Moving on to waste. There we go. So the usual sort of questions here was, waste has to be stored for 10,000s of years. It's dangerous. It's toxic. It needs to be solved, and there's so much of it. And nuclear waste has never really harmed anyone. It is something that needs to be managed, but the focus should be on the fact that it is very well managed, and we have a solution in place in geological disposal. There is some work that needs to be done there, but geological disposal is widely considered an appropriate and safe means of isolating nuclear waste from the biosphere. And typically, when you get these comments about the amount of waste and the toxicity of it, I think the general person is very sort of Simpsons type view of the issue, with loads and loads of leaking toxic waste. But really, as nuclear energy is very dense, the waste created from it is actually incredibly small. And this is where certain analogies come handy. So the lifetime of nuclear waste produced for an individual, if all their energy needs came from nuclear, would fit in a small drink can. And that's all waste. Whereas the high-level waste, which is what the public often raise in our social media posts, they're concerned about that high-level waste, and that's around 1/10 of that can in terms of volume. So to finish this part of my presentation, we have done a lot of work to influence policymakers in the run-up to the conference, and we're just a couple of weeks away now. We want to make sure that nuclear is adequately represented at the conference, and our specific ask is for Alok Sharma or a member of the high-level COP team to make a positive public statement at COP about the role of nuclear power in the journey to net zero. There's many enablers to help achieve this that we've identified, and a really big one is media engagement. So we are hoping to do lots of weird and wonderful things at COP to get the attention of the media, to help raise awareness of nuclear and our call to put pressure on the COP team to make that statement. Collaboration with beyond the industry is very important, so we're developing relationships with NGOs who will be present at COP, as well as engaging with members of the public to raise that awareness of nuclear. And what's really important for me is this is just a fantastic chance to excite people about nuclear and show how proud we are to work in this industry. And so for anyone listening today who also really wants a successful COP for nuclear and indeed the planet itself, then I really encourage you to visit our website at netzeroneedsnuclear.com, where you can find out how you can get involved in the campaign, as well as send a letter to key policymakers at COP. So very quickly, I just want to touch more on my day job. I am a safety consultant, and I've done a variety of safety case work for several clients, including the safety case work involved in nuclear new build. Obviously, that has a clear role in combating climate change, as nuclear is a low carbon energy source. But I think I've also done a lot of work in waste management, and I think that waste management decommissioning projects often get forgotten about in terms of their role in combating climate change. But I feel like they're equally important in my eyes to allow us to get on with building more nuclear. We obviously need to show that we can manage the resultant waste and decommission our facilities. So that work, I feel, indirectly combats climate change by enabling more nuclear new build projects. And a little bit about where I work. So I work at ARC, which Abbott Risk Consulting, which is an independent safety engineering and risk management consultancy headquartered in Edinburgh. And we are considered to be the largest provider of nuclear decommissioning safety case services in the UK, providing services to the majority of the NDA estate. I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit, as I can see I'm running out of time. So although the focus of this presentation has been nuclear, what I actually wanted to tell you more about was some of the really exciting projects ARC are working on in the area of hydrogen and how that is helping to combat climate change. Hydrogen is an emerging sector, and alongside nuclear, it is part of the government's 10-point plan. And using our knowledge of assessment of hydrogen production from waste from the Magnox estate and experience in AI, we have now developed a safety analysis business stream in relation to hydrogen. So we're now working on two very exciting projects: the world's first hydrogen-powered passenger plane for Zero Avia, as well as Scotland's first hydrogen-powered train, a demonstration of which I believe will be at COP26. And linking back to the Net Zero Needs Nuclear campaign, we believe that we need all energy sources to work together to meet net zero. The collaboration of nuclear and hydrogen is particularly important. Most of the UK's hydrogen is currently produced using fossil fuels, so rapid deployment of clean alternatives will be required. There is huge potential in nuclear power being used to produce clean hydrogen, and that's another key point of the Net Zero Needs Nuclear position paper. So I'm just going to go straight to the end here in the interest of time and open up for questions. My email address is also on the screen if anyone would like to get in touch learn more about YGN activities, as well as the hydrogen projects that I just touched on briefly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That's been a fantastic tour of what's going on as far as YGN and COP26 and all the exciting things that ARC are up to as far as hydrogen. You're absolutely right. We need a good mix to solve our climate change issues. Quick question. We'll take a couple of questions. The first one is, how are plans progressing at COP26 with the relationship with the ENS, the European Nuclear Society? Are they coming on well? And is there, other than the lobbying you've already discussed, is there anything else that the members of this audience could help with to really get our message and voice clearer in terms of the nuclear message?
Plans are coming along. It's quite a hard thing to plan around, if I'm completely honest. There are the program for COP itself from the COP government team is still subject to change and timings, but things are looking good for nuclear being represented. But in terms of what we're doing, we're trying to work around these activities. We're very excited about this 3-meter high inflatable gummy bear that, Jazz, I'm not sure if you've heard about it yet, but we're hoping to get a 3-meter high inflatable gummy bear, with the messaging behind that being that one gummy bear is approximately the same size as one uranium fuel pellet, and one uranium fuel pellet then has the ability to power an electric car for 20,000 miles. So we're going for that sort of fun messaging on gummy bears, and it's part of that media engagement. We want to do something that is a bit out there and eye-catching, and I would like to think that a 3-meter high gummy bear in the middle of Glasgow for 2 weeks will get people's attention and make the news. So that's one thing that's going on. There are plenty of other things going on with various events and photo opportunities, but I probably won't go into too much more detail there, as a few things are still under wraps and a bit of a surprise. In terms of how people can help, so yes, there is the general lobbying in terms of our website with that letter tool. But generally, if there are people that would like to be in Glasgow, will be around in Glasgow, then we need all the people that we can. We need all the people we can get. So if you're in Glasgow and you'd like to get involved, then please let us know.
That's brilliant. I love gummy bears, and I think there's a very good visual way of getting the message across in terms of what a fuel pellet its size can deliver in terms of the sheer amount of energy that's locked and stored in it. That's fantastic. Like surprises as well, so it'll be good to see what is on the horizon that will be popping out soon. So thank you very much, Saralyn, for all your thoughts there.